In this coming 10 minutes, I'd like to talk to you about the growing pains from a bank perspective. Because it doesn't only take technology, but it is indeed about business problems. So we'll discuss technology growing pains that we see. We'll discuss some regulatory growing pains that we see, but I will also address organizational growing pains. What does it take to bring something from the lab to production? And hopefully this provides you with a view on our learning so we can all benefit from those learnings. We currently are building a top-notch blockchain team, currently at 12, growing to 15. It's important for us that it is a key capability, also showing the rest of the organization that that is something which is really in development and that it's a place you want to be. When we address the organizational growing pains, I will also address that there's a lot of engagement going on. So we spend a lot of time on communication, education, and engaging with the rest of the organization, because you will need them, not only top senior management, but also other people in other layers in the organization. Obviously there's a big hype. We've been talking about this all day, but that actually also triggered us to come as an institution to come into action, I think roughly around end of 2013. First with some people in the organization that were active in the Bitcoin community, which led to starting a first small team in 2014. Expanding on that, 2016 for us was really the year of the proof of concept. So we basically got our hands dirty and started exploring, experimenting in order to really understand the capabilities and the possibilities of this technology, but also to understand its limitations and therefore its growing pains. So just by getting your hands dirty and start doing things, you'll learn the most. That also means that with our current understanding, we hope to see 2017 as the year of the pilot. Because only if you proceed to the next level, where you can actually, in a real-life environment, test things with clients, then you understand and can solve those business problems from the lab into pilots, from proof of concept into pilots. I think Gartner still positions blockchain really at the top of the hype cycle. I think with the understanding in our institution and with many other financial institutions, because they are building up their capabilities and building skilled blockchain teams, I think it's much lower. It's already in the trough of disillusionment, but we still progress and see a lot of possibilities. We definitely see this as potentially changing the infrastructure of financial services, so we'll be in there for the long haul. There's a couple of primary methods that we use as an institution to learn and understand these growing pains, right? So very focused, together with fintechs, focused on a special use case, but also industry working groups around a use case or consortia that bring and work towards industry standards. So we are an active member in the R3 consortium and also a proud shareholder, by the way, and also one of the founding members of Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So it is, there are different ways and different methods to really understand the technology and the capabilities. And that is what you need to understand these growing pains, and those you need to overcome to really reap the benefits and offer them to your clients or for the benefit of society. So the bulk of investment and efforts goes to a couple of different areas. And for ING, that is no difference. So identity, trade finance, payments, and post-trade in capital markets, in financial markets, those are some of the key areas. And internally, we have developed a simple set of questions, or like a framework, to be able to judge what kind of use cases we want to work on. Because first of all, you need to see and need to understand, do we really need a blockchain? Do we need distributed ledger technology to crack this problem? But there is also a strategic part to this framework. Is this an important area for us, or do we expect it to be an important area in the coming future? The third element in that framework that we use is business commitment and business involvement, as the majority of these use cases will definitely impact the core of your infrastructure of the bank. You need this support because you will hit those pain points pretty soon, actually. So that is the third element that we do take into account when deciding what kind of use cases we want to work on as an institution. There we go. Very quickly, technology growing pains, and obviously, we've been speaking about this the entire day, so I will keep it brief, but there's still a couple of things that have not been solved, right? So scalability, the number of transactions per second, none of these things have been battle tested except for Bitcoin blockchain. So the transaction per second that you sometimes need for payments or financial markets transactions is not enterprise grade at the moment. Privacy and confidentiality, I'm pretty sure that many of our clients, both retail or corporate, don't want all of their information on the public ledger, so still also things to address there. Interoperability, not only between distributed ledgers, but if you look at the infrastructure of financial markets, then you also need to integrate with those different systems, right? If we are talking about issuing Euro commercial paper on a blockchain and try to reduce settlement from TS2 to TS0, I think most people don't really care because they want to use their Bloomberg or Reuters terminals to access that. So that also needs to be taken care of. Fragmentation of speed and appetite among regulators. This addresses the regulatory growing pains, right? So many of them have a wait-and-see approach. Some are more proactive. In Europe, we see a scattered landscape a little bit more. But as a financial institution, we are a regulated entity and we operate in a regulated environment. So it addresses a bit of the topics just mentioned. But we must comply with that. And a lot of the use cases that we're talking about, they involve international transactions. So you have to comply. There are sandboxes, sure, but in all honesty, many of the things that are currently being done in the market, including our own, are still duplicating the actual paper-based processes. So maybe some of you heard my colleague JC here on stage, and what we have done with that Easy Trading Connect use case is really amazing and saves a lot of time and increases efficiency. But it currently duplicates a paper process because that is what holds up in court. Those paper-based contracts, those are what hold up in court. So briefly on the regulatory growing pains, central bank currency issuance on DLT, that will definitely be a game changer. And hopefully China will be the first, or hopefully any other G20 central bank in the coming year, because that will basically and hopefully trigger mass adoption. And that is obviously what we need to reap the benefits. Smart contracts, legal enforceability. In coming pilots, we're trying to test that and really see together with authorities, see what's possible. But currently, most of the things that are advertised and have a regulatory angle, they are duplicated. So we still have the paper-based contracts. Liability sharing on a distributed platform is also something which is not sorted yet. And then we come to organizational growing pains. And maybe this is the slow continent, and maybe the incumbents have a different role here, and maybe the infrastructure is so well developed that there's a different speed of change. But there's also an organizational angle to this. So let me explain where we come from and how we try to address that as ING and as our organization. So you got to understand that the financial industry doesn't really have an R&D pedigree, right? This industry used to be very slow moving, so they're deal and process driven, and the urgent optimizing execution things, they seem always to trump the important new technology driven aspects. So if you want to address that in a company-wide fashion, then you need a method, which is very important, which I'll talk about, but it also touches upon the culture of a bank. And banks are mostly risk diverse, right? So you need to be able to change that, which means that we spend a lot of time on our blockchain university, and I'm not only talking about our DLT efforts, but also our other innovation initiatives. So there's a lot of engagement, a lot of teaching, a lot of interaction, and internal and external efforts going on to make sure that we make that shift and become much more focused on experimentation and search rather than execution only. There's a picture up there which shows PACE, which is basically our own version of a combination of lean startup methodology, agile, and design thinking. And it works really well for us because we see that by creating small but multidisciplinary and dedicated teams, we drive progress much quicker. So very often when something is about new technology people come together. But as was mentioned before me, these address business problems, right? So there's also a lot of business assumptions, commercial assumptions, usability assumptions that definitely need to be tested. So for the focused use cases that we work on, the priority use cases, we also add business leads to these teams. So we have small, multidisciplinary, but dedicated teams that work on these priority use cases. And sometimes, the business assumption has higher priority than the technical assumption, and then you first experiment that and try to validate your assumptions there. Because in the end, probably nobody will care if it's something on a blockchain. It should solve a problem for them. Involved and committed leadership is something that I'd like to finish off with. Very important. So to these use cases and priority use cases, we allocate a business sponsor. The business sponsor role is very different than a managerial role. So also this is a learning curve for the organization and the senior managers, because they are taught how to drive progress for the teams, which includes a lot of autonomy, metrics, measurement, really applying lean startup in a large organization. So far that has brought us quite far. There's some metrics here at the end of the presentation to see what we have done so far. But let me skip before I close to the advice that I'd like to finish off with. Start doing instead of start talking, because we still see that a lot in large organizations. You do some PR, you get a fintech, and then it seems like you're into the game. That's not really the case. Start doing, start acting, educate, engage, and go. Don't do this in isolation. Connect to the network and start learning. So, thank you.
Ivar, I just had a nice boardroom consultant in a healthcare insurance company. They have millions of clients. And who they admired the most as a company which they wanted to mirror themselves to? They wanted to change themselves, their corporate structure, and have all that organizational leadership.
Lincoln.
Which company was that?
It was Lincoln's company.
I have no idea who that was. No, but what do you think?
I don't know.
ING. They thought ING changed in the last 5 years really into a very, entrepreneurial spirit. All these teams and that kind of stuff. So that's something really changed in that company. Why is that? Not because it's always like that. You always had the Postbank, which was very innovative, and you had the bank, which was more traditional. But what changed inside your company that everything moved into a more innovative direction?
I think the company understands, and that starts at the top, but the company understands that
who is it? Who is so innovative-minded there?
I think Ralph Hamers, our CEO, triggered that transformational journey.
Yeah?
But also the understanding that it is a transformation. So it's not a couple of projects in a lab, it's a transformation as a company. I think he, at one point, mentioned we're not a bank doing IT, we were a technology company with a banking license. And that starts to trigger people to think about your future as a company. But it starts at the top, but it definitely doesn't stop there, right? So you still need time. And I think we're on a path of accelerated change, but that still takes time. It's a large organization. We have a presence in over 43 countries. So you don't change that overnight.
Okay, stop talking, start acting. Now, next year when we are here, what real change have you done with this distributed ledger technology? What do you think is the first big change? You had a question of what kind of industry will be changed. People gave some answers to that. But where are you? What is your really secret project which is going to be ready next year?
I don't think we have a really secret project, but in trade finance, whether that's Easy Trade Connect or more focused on SME and mid-corporates to make trade products available to a broader group
at lower cost.
At lower cost and much easier to use. I think that is a key area for a first use case. And obviously in capital markets, all the post trade to make that much more efficient, we'll definitely see some action there.
Okay, Ivar, thank you very much.
Appreciate
it.
Thanks.